Feedback by RQK. Chapter 12. Feedback. The cool howl of a wayward breeze washed over the valley. The wind played music with the trees, creating a chorus of rustling branches through the wood and on the plain. It formed street lines with the grass as their sways reflected in the moonlight. The moon itself hung high in the sky. The bright blue light that had shone down upon the land was intense enough that even the most isolated of crevices were navigable. Several bodies sat against the window sills in awe at its magnificence, basking in its glow. The land of Equestria lay silent and still. The occasional animal broke the peace, but even they kept to themselves more than most other nights. The towns and cities lay deserted as ponies remained in their homes. Like a whisper, a name cropped up. Several little pockets from the voices of small colts and fillies came a name. Through hushed conversations over bedsides, a nagging passed between parent and offspring. When one presented questions, the other answered. Soon afterwards, the bedroom lights disappeared into the night. And then, as many more lights disappeared for the night, the name appeared again. The name of a late mare passed from mother to father, and then back again, before it vanished into another. The wanderings of her life, who she was, what she had gone through. They tried to fathom what those closest to her thought, how they felt, especially now it was over. Various what-ifs presented themselves between them with their offspring as a subject. What if it had been their daughter, or son? One by one, the conversations resolved with varying assurances that it would not happen. That things were safe, things were okay. Silent thanks and other expressions of gratitude followed that. One by one, in the cities and towns across Equestria, the lights went out until, finally, only the moon remained. As ponies of all shapes, sizes, colors, identities slept soundly in their beds, the night ticked by just as it had thousands of moons before. The name took off through the minds of a collective unconscious. The name appeared in the dreamscapes, and sometimes the unconscious ramblings made it back into the real world. But for a select few that had more than a name, other things took shape. A lavender alicorn appeared to them for those who had seen her. Her scratched voice spoke to them for those who had heard her. She ate, she ran, she lectured, she read, and she did many other things for those who had known her. And for many hours long into the night, the idea preserved. In that sense, the late mare lived on within the serenity of the equestrian night. Sunset Shimmer idly scratched her head and slumped further against the desk. Even as he tuned out the hard and rapid patter of rain against the windows in favor of thoughts, there was little to think about. And judging from the other ponies lying about the room, staring at whatever their eyes happened to land on, she assumed that they were the same way. Spike, on the other hoof, had disappeared downstairs with the crystal ball some time prior. Sunset supposed to herself that she could go find him, but to do so would have required her to rise from her position. One thought thorned in her mind. Even with Twilight now gone, no pony else wept. No pony bothered to move about either. But in her eyes, even that was a step up from the absolute messes they had been before. Perhaps it was a sensation. Perhaps this time they had actually seen it coming. Perhaps they were playing the graceful loser. Or perhaps it was the simple fact that this marked the second time it had happened. They had already grieved over it once. It did not need to repeat it a second time. It was hard to say. Sunset pushed back her curled mane and looked out the room's large window. Through a light haze had fallen out of the grounds outside. The rain wasn't falling with the same intensity as before. Sunset could hardly remember the last time she had heard the crack of thunder or witnessed the bright display of lightning. She snored at the thought. Maybe the storm would end soon. No, she thought. It will end soon. While Twilight, 9 days ago, remained alive for within an hour or more, the doors had closed behind her. The seconds counted down, but she had no idea how many seconds there were to count down. Nor did she care. As either way, Twilight was as good as dead. On the other side of the room, Rarity scrutinized some dust on the curve of her hoof. Fluttershy fiddled with the feathers in one of her wings. Applejack scratched at an itch in her ear. Meanwhile, the other two did nothing but lie on their backs and stare at the ceiling. Sunset's eyes drifted through them and toward the large amount of chalk dust and scattered pieces of parchment that coated the floor. With a sigh, she stood up and used her magic to clear up the loose papers and stacked them into a messy pile off to the side. She then summoned over a broom and dustpan out of the corner of the room. The edged sounds of her broom across the floor echoed throughout the tower. The others stirred as Sunset wept, and then watched in full as she emptied what she had into the trash bin. Sunset swept up another pile of chalk dust as she tried to get rid of every last piece. How many more minutes did it have to be? Sunset continued until the few grains remaining invaded her steps, to which she knew nothing short of a vacuum would do. But that could come later. Instead, she returned to the trash bin to spot near the stairs, and returned to her tools to the spot. The man returned to the stack of papers and moved all of them onto the desk. Sunset sorted through them one by one, creating a small number of stacks as she went along. But, as much as she tried to skim over them in her attempts to ignore them, they stuck. Every paper was a reminder of what had just happened and what was about to happen. A few minutes later, and 5 stacks of scribbles in mathematics took the desk. At that, Sunset collapsed once more with a dejected sigh. Her eyes wandered around the room in search of something else to busy herself with. It felt her jaw go stiff when she found none. Sunset slipped further against the desk, just like she had been before. She was sure that if some pony was watching her from another world above theirs, they would be disappointed in what they saw. Sunset wanted to be over. Sunset wanted to be done and reach the end. She wanted to go home and forget. She wanted to see her friends again. She wanted to move on. She wanted to be alone. She wanted to stay. She wanted to get to know these friends of Equestria. She wanted to run from friendship forever. And she didn't know what she wanted. Again. Sunset could not see any sort of satisfying resolution. Yet she wanted it to end. As Sunset descended the stairs, the very first thing she noticed was not the open entry door, but rather the dragon sitting outside of it. She hummed to herself as she reached the landing, and instead glanced toward the kitchen. While the hardened floor had been cleaned for the most part, she could still spot the faint burn marks of a time travel spell. Burn marks just like she had seen in an alternate world below her. Her marks. Letting out a chuckle, Sunset turned her attention back toward the door. The rain splashed against the deck, creating a cacophony of high-pitched splats. A single light, coming inside the door's magnificent golden frame, lit the deck itself. A few guards roamed the grounds outside, as evidenced by lights floating in the fog. Sunset imagined that they had umbrellas or protective enchantments. Spike sat at the very edge, perched on top of the banister as he gazed out what little he could at the rest of the castle. The crystal ball remained clutched in his hands. Shielding her eyes, Sunset stepped down into the rain. It fought against her, and right away she could feel it attack her mane and coat. And as every drop nestled itself on her body, she felt herself turn heavier. Sunset persevered as she made her way to meet the dragon. Sunset lifted her hose onto the banister as a way of sitting next to him. Spike made no indication that he knew she was there. In return, she made no fanfare to signal her reminder. For some moments, the two of them looked out to the rest of the castle. "Well," Spike said after many long moments, "we tried." Sunset rolled her eyes. "Yeah, look where that got us," she said. "Much better than suddenly finding out she's gone, though." Sunset nodded as he moved some hair out of her eyes. "I guess that's true." Spike kicked his feet against the banister as he tracked a nearby moving light. "Weren't you the first one to find her?" she asked. "Yeah." Sunset let out a long breath. He was talking at the very least, but somehow he didn't appear as if against it in any capacity. Somehow, Sunset felt comfortable in asking a question she knew would not have been answered a few days prior. "How did it feel?" Spike shook his head. "It was a lot worse than this. I mean, really, I can't even... I mean, what can I say?" he said with a shrug. "I panicked. I mean, I did. I'm pretty sure I did." Sunset raised an eyebrow. But I don't really remember. Sunset's chuckle escaped her mouth against her will. Really? I mean, he said as he flipped the ball in his hands. We probably spent at least 10 minutes looking for Twilight when we came, and the door behind us was open. I bet she was already dead by then. Sunset nodded and rolled her hoof for him to continue. We couldn't find her note at first, Spike said, because he put her note on the back of the map, and the map was what we found, but when we did find it, he pointed to himself, when I found it, guess he didn't wake up until we all ran down there and found her in that thing. Sunset furrowed her brow. I guess it must have been quite a shock. Yeah, must have. I just wonder what would have happened if we got there 10 minutes earlier, he mused. I guess we'll find out. Huh? I just been thinking about it is all. We saw Twilight leave it note side up. Well then, Sunset said, I guess their version of you won't miss it so easily, huh? Yeah, I guess not. The two looked down into the darkness as the rain continued to bombard both of them. Light from earlier had moved further into the darkness until, at least as Sunset saw it, disappeared in an instant as it presumably rounded a corner. Sunset felt her mane sticking to her head, shook it around in an attempt to give it air. The mare grumbled when she only found her limited success. Spike peered the ball. The cavern lay quiet and empty, save for a crystal ball on the ground. The doors towered over the scene but made no moves. Likewise, Spike made no moves to move the ball to any other spot. Sunset shifted into a more comfortable position against the railing and cleared her throat. She began, averting her eyes. I have a small confession to make. Spike raised an eyebrow in response. I convinced Twilight to burn the book, Sunset said. She got rid of all of her data because I asked her to. Spike's expression remained unchanged for many long moments, and he tapped his fingers against the ball. And? Sunset frowned. And? That's it. That's all? Yeah. Spike widened his eyes. Oh, he acknowledged. I thought it was going to be something big. Sunset shrunk. You're not mad? Nah, Sunset blushed. It sounded too absurd. But I trust you enough to know you had a good reason for it, right? Sunset shivered as a wave of cold overtook her. For the moment, however, she brushed it off. Yeah. Spike nodded. Can you tell me why, though? Yeah. It was just my way of making sure I copied it off her, Sunset replied. Be pretty bad if we got them mixed up or something like that. Spike considered. Why does that matter? Sunset nodded, staring back out into the dark. I had a plan. I had a thought. That what we have is all the information that those versions of us in those lower layers would have gotten. What we started with was the result of their efforts. Our efforts only added to what was there. I read from a Twilight in the layer below. Then I added information using it into stuff we got. So when I time traveled, I gave Twilight her book. Then maybe a version of me above us reads from her. Then she adds her own information. I figured that if we copied from each other, then we have more and more information each time. And then finally, somewhere at the top layer, if there is a top, they'd be able to put it all together and provide an answer. And send it down after the work is done. Sunset collapsed on the rail. Maybe it never existed, she said with a sigh. There was never a way to save Twilight. And all that work has been for nothing. An infinite amount of work for nothing. The rain intensified. The light bombardment turned into what felt like a flogging. Sunset let out a long sigh and let it hit her. Sunset felt it soak in places she didn't know she had as the water dripped down to her body. The storm howled on, even without the boom of thunder. It sounded deafening. For a moment, Sunset wished she could drown in all of it. But at least we tried. Sunset dared to glance up. I mean, yeah, he continued. I kind of hoped she'd be able to use the answer to fake it all while killing the Nameless. That's what we tried to do, but it didn't work. We got to spend more time with Twilight before she left. But we failed, Sunset argued. I know. And it hurts. Spike looked up toward the sky, allowing the rain to directly splash against his face. Oh yeah, I know. It'll probably be a long time till I can get over it. A really long time. But I think I can actually take it now. I think actually, right now, he turned and locked eyes with her. Right now, I actually feel okay with it. Sunset tilted her head with a quizzical expression. Huh? Sunset searched for his words. You know, I mean, we know what happened now. So, I'm not worried about it anymore. Besides, Twilight, she's my hero. Spike caressed the crystal ball and looked down at it, like it was an adorable little foal. A grin spread across his face and he let out a sigh. We had a lot of fun today, he said. Then he frowned. Maybe not so much at the end, but... Sunset nodded. Agree with you there, she replied. And really, he continued unabated, I kinda know where to go from here. I had 9 days to think about it, and I might try writing. I know she liked that. Plus, I kinda learned how to do it from spending so much time with her. Sunset giggled. Well, that's good. Yeah, he said as he trailed off. He looked at the ball once more and stroked his chin in thought. I've got the smarts to do it too. Remember the hourglass trick? He quipped and looked over with a shrug smile. Sunset laughed out loud. Oh yeah, that was still pretty good. The two looked down into the darkness as the rain drew out in light drizzle. Sunset could feel her hair stick together and decided to ignore that for a few seconds more. Sunset hummed as a rogue gust of wind blew across her face. I've got to say, you've really changed in the past few days. Spike raised an eyebrow. Me? Sunset nodded and smiled. Totally. I think you've grown up. Spike went red. Oh, shucks, really? I do, she said, gave him a playful slap across the back. Spike shied away, but his growing smile and even redder face betrayed him. That's good. Yeah, she replied. As Sunset looked down into the rain and turned and splashed against her face, she blinked. Won't mean much if you get sick from this. We should probably go back inside. Spike considered. Alright, just a few minutes though, okay? Sunset shook her head and smiled. She turned her gaze back toward the darkness as they straightened up on the railing. Okay. Sunset shook herself, sending droplets of water flying in all directions. A floating towel captured a bulk of them, while the rest splattered against the floor. Sunset took the towel and dried the rest herself off. Spike cleaned himself in a similar fashion, wiping down the ridges lining his back. Satisfied with that, he hung his towel around his neck and leaned against the wall. Sunset continued along, wiping drops of water off all of her legs. Then she made quick work of her tail. Nodding to herself, Sunset hung her towel across her backside. The two locked eyes, compared each other, then chuckled. A few muffled voices sounded down from upstairs, prompting the two to listen in. The voices sounded questioning, concerned, but neither of them could glean anything else. Looks like they're coming around, Sunset commented. Yeah, there's that. Instead, Sunset took the towel to her face for good measure. The faint sound of moving hooves rested her in her ears, but she paid no attention to them. Spike, however, stepped onto the living room and looked up as Applejack descended the stairs. Hey-ya! Applejack nearly tripped as he ground to a halt. Oh, there you two, Owl! Owl's face is running out looking for you, Owl! Sunset peeked out from under her towel. Huh? Why? Applejack frowned. Yeah, Owl might want to get up here right quick. There's a thing going on. You gotta come see this! Spike and Sunset exchanged worried glances, before both of them threw their towels to the floor. The three of them bolted upstairs. 4 ponies had gathered in the corner of one room. What appeared like 3 of them had gathered around the 4th one. As far as Sunset could tell, Pink immediately propped up against the wall, her body convulsed this way and that. What's going on? Sunset asked, with a tremendous tone in her voice. The former 3 turned around to meet them. Sunset, Spike, Fluttershy said. Pinkie Pie is having a very serious reaction, Rarity said with a worried look at her face. Just look! Pinkie Pie's entire body shuddered. causing the mare to jitter up and down. It's been a while, but I know this one. The mare exclaimed as the shudders racked her body. That means a doozy is about to happen, Fluttershy said. You bad! Until the jitter subsided. The was peeking me and blurted out, It's gonna happen right here! A long silence passed through the room as each of them scratched their heads in thought. The glass of the window nearby whistled from the white rain that hit it. Rarity crossed her forelegs. I can't even begin to fathom what that could possibly be. Applejack grit her teeth together. It wasn't all that cut and dry at Foggy Bog either. Pickamia raised a hoof in the air. It's gotta be something we never expect to happen, she said. If it has nothing to do with Twilight, Rainbow Dash sorry, then I don't care what it is. First I glanced between all of them, then settled in the object in Spike's hands. What if it's something that we'll be able to see from here? Spike put the crystal ball in his hands once, then peered down into it. I don't know, Fluttershy. There's not much to look at. Twilight's crystal ball? Yeah. The crystal ball in there is still the caverns, Spike said as he pointed. What's Twilight doing? Spike thought the ball through the doors and into the chamber. Twilight Sparkle remained in the same position, amidst the steady red glow of the sizzles on the walls. Every so often, in a slow rhythm, Twilight took a deep breath and let it all out again. She laid her eyes shut like she was half asleep. Spike shook his head. Still waiting for it to happen, he said with a grim frown. Seems like there's nothing to see from here then, Rarity scoffed. Yeah, all that's left for us is to come along and find her, then start this whole mess all over again. Eris nodded and voiced several variations of uh-huh. Sunset let out a sigh. Yeah, the others were right. There just wasn't anything more to see within the ball besides that fateful moment. Some other version of them would come along within an hour and find the ball as it was, and the cycle would begin anew. Sunset blinked. Wait. Sunset held a hoof against her forehead as she thought. Something's not right, she thought. I know there were certain things that we saw over the past few days. We saw things happen. Heck, they threw us for a loop. Just like I time traveled to give Twilight a book, I saw their version of me time travel to give her a book. And I know for that to happen, we have to be able to find Twilight at all. If the ball in her world still looks at the caverns, Sunset felt drawn from sweat from her brow. The cloak thing I can let it slide, but this is a huge contradiction. Sunset knocked against her own skull. And I have no idea what, or whether, who could possibly resolve it. A long pause went by as a few thoughts swirled around her head, without her conscience leaving them. After a moment, they presented themselves to her. The Sunset looked up through her mane and frowned. This isn't over. Sunset cleared her throat. Ahem. Actually, could we possibly return to the answer for a moment? Yeah, like it would do us any good now, though, Rainbow Dash said. Twilight's already gone through the door and everything. We couldn't get to her even if we tried. Rarity nodded. Quite so. The only way we could do that is we get her out of that room, and we have no way to do that either. Y'all used up all the time travel spells, too, Applejack said. Only once per lifetime. Again, we could use Trixie, maybe Lyra. That's why it's a doozy, Sunset argued. Because that's the last thing we expect right now, right? Spike tapped his fingers against the ball. Uh-huh. Aside from something coming out of nowhere and fixing everything. He received several stares. What? Rarity straightened herself. All right, sure. Why not? Tell us where you'd like to go with this, Sunset. The other five turned to her, even as another wave of spasms overtook Pikamiya's body. My thought, Sunset said, was that we could get the answer from the world above us, the one watching us from 9 days into the future, and then, obviously, we could turn around 9 days from now and give the answer to them. She explained she pointed to the crystal ball. The others nodded. Sunset glanced between the six of them and said, Would you guys agree that we do everything to make sure we could pass it to the world below us? Again, the others nodded. Sunset turned her attention to the crystal ball and stared holes into it. The ball remained quiet, just as it had in the many long minutes before. I can't let up until that contradiction goes away. Sunset thought as she twisted her curling mane. I don't know where this is going to take me. Okay, Sunset said. I'm going to ballpark this and see what happens. What if The answer exists, but we're not supposed to get it until the right time. Albert frowned. Sun science. So he began as he tried to reach out to her. Just humor to me, okay? What will we do with it? Puzzled expressions washed over their faces as the rain outside died out, leaving only a howl of wind as it wrapped around the tower. They kicked to the floor, scratched their heads, and drummed out thoughtful rhythms on whatever they could find. Despite guess, I know what we'd do, he said with a snap of his fingers. We would hide it where no one would look for it. Sunset paled. Somehow, she knew what words came out of her next, but mouth moved anyways. And where might a place like that be? Spike poked his chest. That's easy, Sunset. Real easy. He let out 2 feet tearing and declared, I would put it in the hourglass. All 6 mares let out sharp gasps in response. Sweet Solnacia! In a single moment, all 7 of them jumped. The voice had been a familiar one that did not belong to any of them. Their wide eyes centered on a ball, and at that moment they turned completely frozen. The ball had spoken. Who in the world is that? Landy cried. First I gasped, could it be? Pinkie Pie's main tail shot up and then tangled into a series of knots. Twilight! Pinkie Pie exclaimed. Is that you? More silence passed. Their hearts beat within their chests. Their attention remained fixed. No one made a sound, not even to breathe. Each second passed from one eternity to the next. And then finally, yes! The crystal ball said with a voice that sounded just like Twilight's. I'm here! I'm here! Several cries of Twilight rose up in unison. A smile spread across their faces, and they jumped for joy. But Sunset frowned. Her glance immediately fell on this mare inside the ball, who appeared just as a few minutes before. It's not her, she thought. But it's... Sunset stamped her hoof against the ground. You! You're the Twilight from the world above us, aren't you? That is correct, Twilight's voice replied. That's incredible, darling, Randy says he caught their hooves together. Absolutely incredible. So, you're talking to us from 9 days into the future? I am. And you're not going to believe this, but I have it. It was exactly in the place you just talked about. Sunset beamed. You have the answer? I have it right here. Twilight's voice yelled with triumphant strength. Pinkie Pie lifted in the air. Awesome! Wow, Fireside exclaimed. Randy's gasp barely made it past her mouth before a host met it. Sunset, do you know what this... I was right. Sunset shouted with a wide smile. Was right. I was right. It does exist. It does exist. And free. Her smile faded. Can't use it. All at once, several groans rose up between the 7 of them. Sunset frowned. 8, counting Twilight's. How concerning, Applejack said, slapping the air. Spike nodded. Well, that figures. Randy shook her head. Flitter remained behind it. Okay, but Twilight, did you use the answer in the past? Yes, that sounds pretty accurate, the ball said. I was, dead for a while, but using this spell, I was able to make it so that it could be reversed, and it could be brought back. Sunset felt her body go solid. So, you did die? Yes, I died. And then, thanks to you, I recovered. Rainbow Dash scowled as her ears pinned backwards. Okay, wait. Let me get this straight. You did this whole magic spell before. You must have had it. So why couldn't you give it to us, oh, I don't know, a little earlier than you might have counted? Quite so, Verity said with a frown. And you could have at least let us know you were okay a little earlier. The crystal ball went silent for many long moments. Then it sighed. I forgot. The voice croaked. The heavy, downtrodden tone bled through those 2 words. The fury in Rainbow Dash's expression melted away. You forgot? Yes. There's a lot of things I've forgotten on account of me dying. I can't even remember how exactly I got to the chamber. I know that the map could help, but I'm so sorry. Twilight's voice wavered and trembled to a point where her voice was a whisper. If I had just remembered, then maybe you could have saved me in your world, or the one you've been watching. Spike wiped a shady tear from his eyes. Oh, Twilight. I'm a really bad Twilight, her voice said. I just felt so guilty because I watched you go through all of this for me. And when you needed me to do something, I couldn't. I just felt so awful that I'm alive and your world's me is not. Elsack doffed her hat. Twilight, it ain't your fault. This whole thing's been mine messed up. I'm just glad at least one of y'all's safe. I agree with Applejack, Fluttershy second. I'm sorry, Twilight's voice said again. Sunset cracked her neck. Twilight, you said you had the answer, right? CMS is on the other side. I have the whole thing, Twilight's voice said. I fisted it out of the hourglass just a few seconds ago. Sunset nodded as he broke through the group and trotted toward the desk. Her horn lit up, and dozens of papers on top of the desk shifted around. A stack of blank papers presented itself before her, and, after taking a moment of bumping them into the line against the desk, she took the topmost one and turned. Sunset looked to the ceiling from a determined scowl. Then we might as well copy it from you, just as I originally planned. Well, that sounds good to me, Sunset's voice paused. You're going to need a lot more paper than that. Sunset raised an eyebrow. What? Will 5 murder do? No, it will not. The magic spell that I have on me is 70 pages long. Sunset bought 70 pages? She cried, pulling at her mane. The other 6 exchanged frowns. Well, no wonder you forgot it! Sunset muttered as she took the whole stack instead. That length of spell is unheard of. Twilight's voice laughed. Oh, just wait until you see how it's laid out. It managed to compress a few hundred pages worth of information into those 70 pages. Sunset felt the blood rush through the veins in her head. And here I thought the time spell was complex, and that was only a page long. She threw her hose into the air. Whatever! At that point, Sunset turned to face the other 6, with anticipatory grins on their faces. Okay, you guys, everyone grab a quill! She commanded, as he levitated over a cup full of quills and some ink. As he took the quills into their mouth, with the exception of Rarity and Spike, who elected their magical aura and hands respectively, Sunset passed out 10 pieces of paper to each of them. So, Twilight's going to need all of that, huh? She mused. From what I can tell you, you only need to give me the other's first 16 pages. Only 16? Yes, there's 10 pages of actual spell for me. 54 of those pages is a second caster, and then a 6-page library full of words that both spells use. Sunset blinked several times before slapping herself in the face. It's a spell in 2 parts. Of course. Twilight's voice laughed, then made a sound of clearing her throat. Yeah. Speaking of spells in 2 parts, I'm going to transmit you some images now. Sunset nodded to the others. All of them pressed their quills at the top of their papers in response. The 6 of them grinned toothy grins. We got this, sort of grins, and almost shook from anticipation. Sunset flared her horn. We're ready, Twilight. Sunset looked up from her half-completed page at the large image hovering above her. The image contained 2 sheets of paper, one for her and one for Fluttershy. The latter of the 2 worked feverishly, crawling several lines without waking up. The others worked with equal intensity, the sort that made them lick their lips ran dry, where sweat drops formed on their brows. Whereas Rarity could copy several lines without having to double-check, Applejack and Rainbow Dash had to check after every handful of characters. The other 3 fell somewhere in between. Except for at that moment, Spike sat backwards, knocking his feet together as Rarity copied off an entirely separate image of 2 pages. Pinkie Pie held up her paper. Piece 22 is done, she proclaimed. Sunset placed her quill down to take a good look at the page. Several lines span from paper from left to right, top to bottom. Symbols that she had never seen before, but knew they corresponded to an entry from the first 6 pages, interwove with magical sizzles to create a wall of text. It sounds like a computer compression, she thought. Occasionally a footnote, rated in a thankfully plain language, appeared in the margins. At the very top of the word exit headed the page, coupled with the page number. She had seen the words entry and library before that. That looks like the page I have, the crystal ball said after a few moments. Here comes 27 and 28. Sunset slid Pinkie Pie's completed page into the glowing stack and then flared her horn. Meanwhile, Spike stood up and hopped over toward where Pinkie Pie sat. The 2 fists pumped a hoof as he sat back down. A high shriek surrounded the tower made each of them wince, and they looked up as Sunset's horn lit up in response. The horn sputtered as Sunset fought to keep the existing pages up, as a new picture sprouted out of it. 2 new pages contained a single picture. Sunset rotated the image so she could see it. The Spike and Pinkie Pie responded by jamming their quills into their respective papers and taking off. Sunset looked back down at her own page and pressed her quill against it. She bounced into place as she thought about that Twilight looked down on them at that very moment. How Twilight was alive in the other world, and that the Twilight in another world had survived. She looked up at the protected image in front of her. Her eyes ran past the symbols on the page she was meant to copy down. She knew that they were there. Her quill refused to move all the same. Copying was meant to be a simple task. All she had to do was write what she saw. She had done a whole book the previous night even, so her share of 10 pages should have been easy. Instead, Sunset let out a sputtered snort and threw her quill onto the parchment. At once, everyone looked up. "Sunset!" Rarity asked with a concerned frown. "What's the matter?" "I'm thinking," Sunset replied. "About what?" "Oh, I'm just," she said as she pushed her mane back, "thinking about our Twilight. I can't believe all this. I mean, the whole point of the answer was to save Twilight, and it was set up so that way every Twilight in every world would get it. But somehow, that stopped with you, Twilight. Gosh, I'm so sorry." Twilight's voice quivered. "I was so sure!" Sunset yelled, slamming her hoof against the parchment. "You said it yourself, Applejack, that what we saw tonight is exactly what happened before. All of our worlds acted like each other. So aside from what we did, and where all of you went to collect the stones, what happens in one of them happens in all of them. And yet, you're alive, but ours isn't." She grabbed a hold of her own mane and pulled hard. "So, what did we do so differently?" A series of groans rose from each other's. Applejack pulled at her face while Rarity blushed and averted her gaze. "Not to mention, what the heck is the deal with Twilight's crystal ball not showing the tower like we first found it yet?" Sunset thought. "I imagine it's my fault," Twilight's voice said. "Out of all the Twilights out there, I must have been the first to not remember the spell." A long resigned pause passed, and the ball said, "I'm such a terrible friend. I failed so miserably, and you lost your world's Twilight all because of me." "That's nice and all," Rainbow Dash said as she stood up. "But I don't think that this is all you, Twilight." Applejack narrowed her eyes. "Rainbow, what are you on about?" "I mean, it was different in there, too. Remember the cloak?" Rainbow Dash asked. Fluttershy nodded. "Of course I remember the cloak, because we found it at the door." Pinkie Pie giggled. "Oh yeah, because our Twilight wore it, and their Twilights didn't, so there's a difference." "Wait," Twilight's voice interrupted. "What are you talking about? What cloak?" Everyone looked toward the ceiling at the same time, and so they could glare at the disembodied voice down. "You know," Spike said. "The cloak? The one you had hanging downstairs?" "I know which one you're talking about, but I never wore that." Spike shook his head and laughed at his disbelief. "I guess our Twilight was the only one that did that then." Pinkie Pie waved her hoof through the air. "We did find that thing next to the ball through when we went down there." The crystal ball did not answer. "Twilight?" This is weird," Twilight's voice stammered. "I do remember seeing a hooded figure that night. I couldn't tell who they were, but when I tried to rush out and see them off, they disappeared. But they left their cloak behind." Spike crossed his arms and drummed his fingers against them and thought. "And then after that, your world's version of us would have found the cloak." "Well, that doesn't put some cloaked pony there in our world, too?" Rainbow Dash asked, looking between everyone for looks of approval. "But that's a problem because we had that thing checked," Spike said. He pointed upwards to where he thought she was watching and bellowed. "We traced that cloak to you, Twilight!" "That is weird," Twilight's voice said. Sunset ground her teeth together but said nothing in response. She instead looked around at the others to see how they were reacting to it. Even with all these similarities between worlds, Sunset thought, the Twilight we've been watching and the Twilight watching us are 2 worlds away from each other. There's just no way she could possibly help her now. Sunset scratched at a discoloration within the floor. "Is there?" Twilight's voice sucked in her breath. "I remember this much. They disappeared in a bright flash of light, and I saw burn marks on the ground, It was kind of like when Sunset teleported in here how many nights ago that was. Spike raised an eyebrow. Really? Yeah. I even compared that area of the tower a few times to what I was using my own crystal ball, because they looked so similar. I learned how to move the few around after I died and came back. I guess, Twilight's voice said, now that I think about it, it looked like how it might have been a time travel spell. Spike furrowed his brow. We saw burn marks at that door too, you know. This keeps getting stranger and stranger. All this happens and I don't have any explanation for it. I mean, certainly I can't do that because... The crystal ball went silent. Oh. Oh. You clever writer. You clever writer. Rainbow Dash gasped whirling at the ceiling. Twilight? Applejack second. Long, a second pregnant pause passed through the room and then... Ah! These crystal ball cried in astonishment. Twilight! Spike cried. Are you okay? Oh my gosh, 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 oh my gosh. It just might. Twilight's voice said at a million miles per hour. What? Another pause. And then, look, you girls did a great job. Just stay there for 2 seconds, okay? Sunset frowned. Okay. Rainbow Dash flung her complete paper into the center of the ring before she collapsed on the floor and pouted. Verity turned her attention back to the image in front of her, erased her a few more lines before she too, delicately, placed her paper into the center. The other 4 coils set back down into their papers, and either yawned out loud or attempted to stifle them. Sunset furrowed her brow. What is she up to? A set of convulsions overtook Pinky's body, causing her to yelp out. Her voice and body shook as it did. The doozy! The doozy! For a moment, Sunset looked at the crystal ball. Twilight remained in her sitting position in the center of the room, oblivious to anything that just happened, at a pace that never attained before. Twilight's eyes sat open as a loud groan erupted from the doors at the head of the chamber. The doors groaned and quaked, and were already starting to slide apart. The report shook the chamber, causing her to wobble in position. Then she let out a gasp. All at once, the 7 let out startled cries as they buzzed around the crystal ball, craning their necks to see what was happening. Sunset's horn chose that moment to cut out. Several images that had been floating about disappeared. Then Sunset pouted. There's something standing behind that door! She exclaimed. Within the entryway, a hooded figure with one hoof pressed against the crystal ball. The brown cloth surrounded her face in darkness. Sunset could barely make out some of the features on the bottom of the muzzle, but had enough to tell whoever it was. They were frowning. Ah! Rainbow Dash blurred. They're going to get tethered! Who goes there? Twilight shouted from the center of the chamber. No! Pinkie Pie cried, throwing her hose in the air. They're going to ruin the whole thing! Sunset narrowed her eyes as he glanced at the figure. Cloaked figure. Cloak. She felt her heart swell within her chest, almost painfully at that. I'm going to see who that is, Sunset said. She grabbed the ball and thumped the ball forward. The image moved to a slow, deliberate pace and crept up toward the cloak pony behind the door. As the image drew closer and closer, the figure grew more discernible. Once the crystal ball's view arrived at a clear angle, Sunset looked up. Her heart felt like it was sort of exploding. Twilight Sparkle? Sunset tremulously announced. Princess Twilight Sparkle looked back out from under the hood's edge with a determined frown. Her eyes remained on the crystal ball under her hoof. The other 6 were still as statues. A tremulous and whispered, What? But Fluttershy was the only reaction they were afforded. The pony in the center of the chamber lowered her head like she was about to charge. Whoever you are, you need to get out of here, right now! The hooded figure remained focused on her task, whatever that was. The 7 was without a single sound. The hood behind Twilight, behind the door, took her hoof off the ball. No sooner after she did, a white light surrounded her. The glow grew and grew before it eclipsed her entire body. The hooded Twilight looked up and grinned. Sunset gasped. That's a time spell, and it's pulling her back, she thought. The space around her cracked. In that instant, the lavender alicorn vanished in a shower of white heart sparks. The cloak did not. It remained behind, since from the explosion. It floated for a few moments as it rode the shockwave and upward rush of air, before it started to fall. For a moment, They could only hear the pounding thump of her beating heart. It had been beating fast before, but she watched the cloak's slow and graceful descent. It seemed like an eternity between each successive beat. The cloak landed without making a sound. Then silence. Sunset blinked. She couldn't bear to move. She imagined her body would not budge as she wanted to. The tower dissolved around her to the point that she could only see the crystal ball in front of her. Just outside the door was the ball.
That, and there's that tacky little cloak over there,
Randy's voice said in Sunset's head.
but we're not concerned about that.
Twilight sprinted over from her spot in the center of the room and skidded to a halt in front of the two objects on the ground. Her eyes passed over the cloak on the ground and noted the burn marks beneath it, before she turned her desiring eyes to the crystal ball.
Is that Canterlot Tower? She said. My ball shows Canterlot Tower.
Sunset felt a chill around her spine and shivered. Why would they do that? Why would they move it there? Twilight screamed. Sunset bellowed, but even then her throat felt dry. The room grew cold, and Sunset felt herself frozen to the spot. The wind caressed the windows, and her salty whistle blew through one ear and out the other.
Because,
she whispered,
we would never have found that first night otherwise.
Twilight looked upwards with a concerned expression. What? Sunset's jaw all but hit the floor.
What happens in one world happens in all of them. Is, was, will be.
Then Sunset screamed and shot to her host. I got it! She exclaimed. I finally got it! I know how all this works now! In one instance, the other stood up in alarm. You what? Spike cried. Sunset shook her head.
Everything makes sense now. I don't know why I didn't see it before. This was always going to happen. We didn't do anything different after all!
Randy gasped.
Oh my stars. Did we just do it?
We, Rainbow Dash began, tossing her mane around. We what? Fluttershy's jaw hit the floor.
Well.
Sunset looked back down to the ball, snoring. There's still something we have to do. Sunset grabbed the ball again. Twilight, can you hear me?
I can hear you,
Twilight replied as she continued to survey the items.
Who was that? And what were they doing there?
Twilight, we know who they were. We know what they did. And we know why they did it.
Twilight,
she said as a grin spread across her face. We have it! We have the answer! Twilight paused as processing a response. Then she looked up with wide eyes. You have it?
We have it!
Alzak all but leapt into the air. Hooray! This is the break we've been waiting for! Twilight glanced back at the chamber as a large white smile overtook her features.
Great! That's phenomenal! What is it?
Sunset used her magic to summon a stack of transcribed pages. She flipped through them and set the ones she wanted, the first 16 pages, aside.
I'm going to have to send you multiple images. Can you handle that?
Twilight chuckled.
Of course I can. How hard can it be?
Sunset looked at the first 2 pages and stared into them.
All right, here they come,
she said and flared her horn. One streak later, and an image of 2 pages appeared in front of Twilight. She immediately took to examining it. Meanwhile, Sunset prepared the next 2 pages and, using her spell, set them into the ball as well. Another streak later, an image containing 2 more pages appeared, which Twilight moved so they floated next to the first. The 2 continued until all 16 pages had been sent. Twilight looked between all the images, and before, a white ball of light appeared. It appears as a blob at first, but as Twilight concentrated, the blobs took form. The unfathomable shape soon transformed into a patchwork of sizzles and crisscross lines. The pattern settled into several rotating layers. With each development, the layers grew in number. First 5, then 20, then over 100. With each layer, the ball of light grew to accommodate them.
I'm only halfway done with the spell,
Twilight mused. She looked at the precast and the images surrounding her and smiled.
But I think I can take it from here.
Go get him, Twilight, Sunset urged. We'll see you on the other side. Twilight nodded, and after giving the 2 items on the ground a starting glance, Twilight turned around. Her images and precast followed closely behind her as she trotted, with a new spring in her step, back into the chamber. The doors crackled once, then slid closed once more. Sunset fell backwards onto it with a loud groan. Yeehaw! Amphitech said, tossing her head up into the air. Loud and bubbly booms sounded throughout the tower as Pinkie Pie pressed against the cyan-colored cannon, showering them with streamers in all sorts of color. A round of laughter erupted as the strands of papers rained down on them. Great! Spike said, clapping his hands together. Now what? Sunset looked up towards the ceiling. Twilight, are you back yet? Yes, the crystal ball said. I'm back. I'm back. Great, come on, she said, beaming as he hunched back over her fast-finished paper. Let's finish writing the spell down and set things right once and for all. The cavern's crystalline walls zoomed by at speeds faster than Sunset dared to discern. Her eyes remained forward, split between the paces of the string bound to the book in front of her face and the path to the ground of the cavern snarked across the mountain. With each pace, the ball of light trailing beside her grew larger and larger. The precast lit the paces in front of her with increasing strength. Sunset could barely make out the rapid clops of several ponies behind her, but made sure they never fell behind. The path turned left, and Sunset skidded to a halt. A large pair of stone doors glared down at her. It separated her from her desire. A few feet away, but with precast at her side, it was well within reach. The doors groaned and slid into the walls. Sunset glanced back at the six behind her, and nodded once more before proceeding into the chamber. The rest followed closely behind her. The wide hemisphere of her room glowed an angry red. Lighted symbols rained around the floor and dotted the walls. But a towering tree-like crystal pillar with a purple horn stuck in the dead center arrested all attention. Sunset stopped halfway to the pillar, let her eyes glance back over to the pages. The precast continued to glow as Sunset poured more of her feelings into it. Even with 10 pages left, the swirling ball of light remained more complex than anything she had ever seen before. She glanced back at the ponies and the dragon behind her. All of whom looked back with intent expressions. I don't know what this spell's going to do, Sunset said, but once I start it, I won't be able to stop it. The others nodded. Spike stepped forward. Well, we're ready whenever you are, he said. Swallowed and turned her attention back to the pages. Her eyes darted back and forth between working down the current page and consulting a pattern from the library pages. Line by line, the precast grew. 5 pages. 4. 3. The precast sparkled as the scores of layers within rotated at unfathomable velocities. A drop of sweat ran down her muzzle, and she did not even notice. Finally, Sunset closed the pages, letting out a breath she had been holding since stepping into the chamber, while her eyes remained on the precast in front of her. Running through it every which way, her magic moved the string-bound book back behind her, where it landed in Spike's waiting grasp. Here goes! Sunset announced. Spike drew back and let out a burst of green flame. The papers burned under them until nothing returned. The green embers then sealed out of the room and then disappeared around the corner. Sunset drew a breath and touched her horn to the spell. The ball of light flashed once, then streamed into Sunset's horn. Her horn lit up as a response as a wave of energy pulsated through her body. Sunset could feel her insides rock as it traversed the precast. It felt painful, like something was cracking a whip at her insides. Sunset held her breath as a means to bite it, but the burning grew harder and harder with each passing second. Then, Sunset was aware of a red and orange around her. She could feel the white-hot glow in her eyes and raw magic around her grating against her skin. Sunset rose off the floor, and regardless of how she kicked off the air, the spell refused to let her back down. Her insides tingled, and for a moment, she felt a crack shoot up from her horn. Just like she had after putting on the element of magic at the fall formal, she thought her insides would then rip apart. The aura shot out. Several tendrils made beelines for the ponies behind her. They cried out and screamed as it scooped them up. Then another, like an afterthought, took hold Spike as well. Sunset looked behind her as she writhed around and let out a shocked, No! Her 6 captors cried out in pain as the spell poked and prodded at them. But the spell treated Spike with tameness compared to the ponies. Their cries reached a crescendo as a set of white pillars of light sprang out and engulfed them. For a moment, the ponies disappeared entirely. Hey, am I the only one who's getting flashbacks to Daydream Shimmer? Speaking of which, with this awesome moment happening, You have a choice of music to play. Either the My Little Pony Italian version, or Back in Time from Back to the Future, or The Power of Love, both Sailor Moon and that, or start playing the English version of Braveheart by Plinke. Me, I'm playing Braveheart. A new set of ponies emerged. Ponies that looked much like the old ones, but appeared much more extravagant. Colors from all parts of the rainbow striped through their manes and tails, both of which had grown to unproportioned lengths. Each of them, even within the grasp of Sunset's aura, glowed with white auras of their own. "The rainbow power!" Rainbow Dash cried. Sunset blinked. For a moment, wondered if anything happened to her own body, but she did not look. "Ugh, it's draining me!" Rarity cried as he pulled against the magic around her. Spike gasped, "The spell! It called the rainbow power and is trying to use it to power itself!" Pinkie Pie fought against it to look straight ahead. "Sunset!" Sunset had to fight against her own aura, just to reach back toward them, but found herself too far away. "Girls, Alice echoed out an exhausted grunt, before she craned her neck and surveyed the area around her. She furrowed her brow and went limp. "You got this, Sunset! I trust you." Riverside looked over. With her pain expression, nodded. "Me too," she said. The aura around her, in response, lightened its grip. The arrows looked up to Sunset and threw out determined grins. Even Spike, who floated below in an untransformed state, smiled up to her. Sunset smiled and nodded affirmatively. And then the ravishing cackle of the magic within her turned and warmed and vibrant. She turned her attention back to the pillar before her and let the spell run its course. Where the spell had been raging inferno inside her before, much like the element of magic had been, this felt like a coursing river. Somehow, her entire body felt different. Something had happened, but she could not put her hoof on it. The light from her horn became blinding as it reached out to the rest of the cavern. The walls rumbled and the lights within the symbols all over pulsated. The crystal pillar in the center of the room shook and swayed. The pillar did not shatter like Sunset expected to. Instead, the crystal melted. It molted outwards, leaving the trapped horn floating in space. The force fled across the floor like a puddle. Then the puddle rotated. The molten crystal ran slow like molasses, but appeared clear as water. Sunset felt a powerful surge of energy run into her horn. Sparks jumped off her horn as he struggled to keep conscious. But instead of fighting it like before, she concentrated on funneling it through. The energy emerged through the tip and spread through all directions, rocking it out to speeds faster than she could fathom. She could feel the spell reaching for something, or some things, but she couldn't tell what. Seconds later, a purple orb appeared before her, then another, then a score, then a few hundred. Many more appeared to the room and swirled around the center, countering to the liquid below. Stones, Sunset thought. One by one, the stones dove into the liquid. Several splashes dotted the surface as each orb disappeared. With each addition, the rotating pool spun faster and faster, with a bluish hue that had been before turned purple. The room rumbled with such intensity that the small specks of dirt and dust cascaded out the ceiling in sheets. As more and more stones teleported into the room, they dove into the liquid. The hum turned into a ground-shaking roar from the quaking of the walls and sheer velocity of the whirlpool below. And then, the purple horn that floated in the center of the room lit up. It sucked the molten crystal up toward it. The liquid spiraled around the horn at first, before swallowing it whole. As more and more rose up, the liquid compacted into a solitary spear around it. Then the spear exploded in a bright white flash. An outburst of pure satiated energy rose up in a hot column of light, so bright that even behind shielded eyes, Sunset could find herself blinded. She could hear an electrical crackle from the center of the room. The light died just enough for her to open her eyes once more and cast a clear glimpse of whoever could be in. The ponies and the dragon behind her did the same. Twilight Sparkle stared at them with white-lit eyes and an unconscious frown. Rainbow-like hair and tail swayed with the energy that flowed through them, animated by the spell itself. Twilight floated before them, and her wings fell to their full length, like an angel almost. Sunset's mouth hung limp for many moments before she managed to curve it into a small smile. And then Twilight's body sunk the column into itself, and with one last flash of light, all the tugs and pulls of the spell broke down. All at once, the 8 of them found themselves thrown to the floor. Without a moment's reprieve, Sunset lost conscious.